In the early days of conservation, who do you think would be a suitable character as the first warden of the Sabi Game Reserve, what later became Kruger National Park? Would it be a distinguished leader of the Boer resistance, an experienced government official of the British Colonial Office, or how about a Scottish military officer educated at Sandhurst and heir to a noble estate in Scotland? Well, if you said option 3, you are absolutely correct. His name is James Stevenson-Hamilton, and he is who we are going to focus on today. Stevenson-Hamilton was born in Dublin in 1867 and spent early years on their family estate in Fairholme, and was the oldest of 9. As such, was the heir. He would end up attending high school at Rugby High School before being sent to Sandhurst Military College. From there, he would earn a commission with the 6th Inniskilling Dragoons, a cavalry unit in the British Army. As a result of his commission in the form of second lieutenant to the British Army, he would end up travelling to South Africa and see combat against Dinizulu's impies at Moy River in 1888, and it was during this that he saw South African wildlife for the first time in person. It was a family of rebuck which captivated him and stayed with him for the rest of his life. He would end up being promoted to lieutenant towards the end of 1888 before returning to England, and in early 1898 he would once again be promoted to captain, after which he would return to Southern Africa and follow his spirit of adventure. Stevenson-Hamilton spent the rest of that year exploring the Zambezi, Kariba, Gorge, Barotesland, what we refer to today as a large portion of Zambia on foot, northern Rhodesia, now known as Zimbabwe, and Kafue, before returning to active duty in 1899 to fight the Boer War. He would go into fight in the Boer War until its conclusion in 1902. In doing so, earn himself the Queen's South Africa Medal, the King's South Africa Medal, and the rank of Major. After the war ended, Stevenson-Hamilton briefly contemplated returning to England and continue his military career, but the more he thought about it, the more he hated it. It is at this point where Stevenson-Hamilton gets involved in conservation, and did so by looking for a new challenge. After exploring some old contacts and inquiring about new and exciting adventures, he would be appointed as the first warden of the Sabi Game Reserve by then South Africa Commissioner of Native Affairs, Godfrey Legden. Legden would second him from the British Army to the Colonial Office as a bachelor, a man of means, and a professional soldier. Stevenson-Hamilton signed a 2-year contract, after which he set off to the malaria-ridden so-called White Man's Grave, the Lowveld. All he had with him was a map, a wagon, oxen, provisions, and ammunition. Upon arrival to the Sabi Game Reserve, he would station himself briefly at Crocodile Bridge, before moving his headquarters to the old blockhouse at Sabi Ridge, now known as Skukuza. Once his permanent headquarters were established, his first order of business was to ban all hunting in the reserve and start relocating the inhabitants of the protected area out of it. This is where the name Skukuza comes from. It was given to Stevenson-Hamilton by the Tsonga people, more likely than not as a derogatory term, as it roughly means he who sweeps clean. In response to his changes, but due to his connections within and the understanding of Tsonga language and customs, it would later become a term of admiration, and eventually Sabi Bridge would be renamed to Skukuza in his honor. His next order of business was to appoint Harry Woolhunter as the park's first ranger, swiftly followed by growing the park to much of its current size, by convincing landowners to lend him their land and courting a generous donation of land from the Orpen family. He would then present the idea of unifying the Sabi and Chingweti game reserves, proclaiming them as a national park, to Jan Smuts in 1912. However, due to political events and special interests, mainly mining and agriculture, and ministers enjoying the hunting benefits of government wildtuins or game reserves, the idea was put on the back burner as an outlandish experiment that would simply waste taxpayers' money. In World War I got a bit in the way as well. However, this would not deter Stevenson-Hamilton and his allies, mainly Member of Parliament Piet Grobler, who in 1926 would introduce the National Parks Bill to Parliament. With Stevenson-Hamilton's backing and encouragement, the main aim of the bill was to establish a National Parks Board and unify the 2 largest government game reserves into a national park, which was to be named Kruger National Park, in honor of then President Paul Kruger. And this was more of a political move than anything else, as in private the President Kruger quite liked the idea, but couldn't risk the political backlash if the project failed. But he was convinced to support it, as his name would forever be etched into one of the world's greatest conservation projects, which he loved very much. The added benefit was the bill was then sold to Parliament as a realization of the President's greatest dream, and was somehow successful. As such, Kruger National Park would be proclaimed on the 31st of May 1926, with the first visitors arriving in 1927. Stevenson-Hamilton would then go on to serve the park for another 20 years, retiring in 1946 at age 63, after 44 years of service to one of the world's greatest and maddest conservation efforts at the time, where most of what he started still exists in the same form to this day. He spent the rest of his years living on a farm in White River and ended up marrying Hilda Cholmondeley, who was 34 years younger, and they would end up having 3 children together before he would pass away gently in his sleep at home at the age of 90 in 1957. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, and the beautiful Technicolor rainbow in between, I hope you've learned something today, or at the very least enjoyed. Thank you for your time, and as always, remember to make your day a great one.